Hi, I'm Zach. Welcome to the Ranger Cabin. Marc Mazzocchi is a strength and conditioning coach that walks the talk. He's a student of movement and has helped hundreds of people become better versions of themselves through functional fitness. Marc is humble. His work ethic is disciplined and fierce. He's been a national level powerlifter and has successfully managed the gym, Titanium Athletics, since 2009. Today we have a chat about Marc's journey and then get into some thoughts on identity, physical and mental health, and my gnarly misdiagnosed heart issue that I had operated on twice in 2020. People choose to train with Marc for many different reasons, but he says the most common goal people have is to look good naked. Marc's a guy who cares deeply about his people and forges minds and bodies. Please enjoy my discussion interview with Marc Mazzocchi. I'm Zach Whyte, and this is the Ranger Cabin. Okay, Marc Mazzocchi. Excited to be here, man.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, man.
Yeah, it's been so long, and with COVID, of course, we're here, well spaced in Marc's gym. And who are you, Marc?
First and foremost, I'm a dad and a husband, so that's important to me. That's sort of my main gig. The business is just a side gig. I run a gym, and people come and set goals, and I try and help them get there. And I guess my biggest thing with the gym is I don't want it to be like a regular gym. My biggest kick is taking people who hate the gym and making them fall in love with it and realizing it's not that stereotype that they see, in movies and TV commercials and TV shows where it's just a bunch of knuckleheads and meatheads sitting there lifting iron and broing it out and acting like fools. It's not that at all.
What's wrong with that?
Hey man, if that's your jam, go for it. But I mean, big gyms really aren't like that either. There's always going to be one. I mean, you get enough people together and there's always going to be an asshole in the group. That's just how it is, right? It's analytics.
So I've known you for a long time.
Yeah.
This podcast really is about identity. And when I think of identity, I actually think of you because there's a lot of people that come to you to almost change their identity and change how they see themselves and change how they move in the world. And so I think, you have a lot of experience in this realm. Background wise, it's always been really fascinating to me that you became a gym owner. The idea that you went to university and did, what was your major?
English Lit, Greek and Roman Studies and Film. So,
you can write and you can think, and I've, like you're a deep thinker, and your brother is a doctor, has his doctorate in philosophy.
Yeah, political philosophy.
Like your family is wonderful, and you come from a very kind of similar childhood to my own, I think. And then you became a gym owner. What was the impetus for that?
I'm not really sure. It was not something I ever really kind of grew up wanting to do. I kind of just fell into even just working out. I don't know. I just was fascinated by trying to get better. I was one of those really lame kids. All the kids want to play the game, but they never want to practice. They never want to do the drills and stuff. And I freaking love the drills, man. I remember in the summer getting really excited about school because I couldn't wait to go to practice right away because I wanted to do the drills. And we didn't get to do that in the summer because there's no coach and you're kind of on your own doing your thing. Yeah, for whatever reason, I decided I wanted to lift weights. Our parents, that's not their generational thing. So when I asked my dad and mom for a weight set, they're like, oh, you don't need that. And there was all the, it'll stunt your growth and, all that nonsense.
Bodybuilding was really big, and that wasn't anything to do with fitness per se.
No, it was just the niche that was popular at the time, that and aerobics, right? Probably like your dad. My dad's response was, well, manual labor will do that. So,
yeah, my dad said, get on the wood pile, you lazy bastard.
Yeah, and my dad ordered 2 cords of wood, gave me them all and said, there you go.
That's exactly the same.
Start splitting and stacking, my boy. But I mean, the funny thing is, as a result of that, he was like, whoa, this kid really wants weights, because I do it every single day after school until it was done. And so he went and got me a pair of 5-pound dumbbells after that.
Sick.
Yeah. Of course, after all of that wood chopping and stacking, I was way too strong for the 5-pound dumbbells. But it kind of evolved from there. And I noticed that as I went on with lifting weights, because I was just fascinated by doing that, the idea of being stronger. I remember seeing a World's Strongest Man competition on TSN one summer. I think baseball was on strike or something like that later on. And I watched these huge guys doing ridiculous things. And I'm like, that's really cool. But I don't look like that.
Right.
So where do I fit in, And with the sports stuff, I learned later on that all the guys that I played sports with had all these like mounting injuries and shoulder issues and knee issues and back issues. And I never had that problem. And I couldn't figure out why. And knowing what I know now, looking back, it was probably because I was lifting weights. And
totally, 100%. Like when I was, well, come back to your question, but I mean, you're 2 years younger than me?
1 year.
You're only 1 year younger than me.
Yeah, well, that's how we met, right?
I know.
I was thinking about that today when we were going to get together. I'm like, oh man, how long's it been? It's been almost 30 years, man.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. What the hell?
Yeah.
So when I met you the first time, I was the captain of our high school volleyball team.
Grade 10, yeah, and I was grade 9 at junior high school.
Yeah, so in a different school.
Yeah, and our season had finished, and John Carswell was the coach of your team.
Yeah, he's awesome. I saw him yesterday.
Yeah, oh yeah, one of my favorite all-time coaches. Him and Steve Knight were my two favorite coaches of all time. But anyways, they put a call down to some of the junior high schools and said, hey, do you have any promising guys? And we had like a freak of nature class in grade 9. Like, I mean, our starting basketball team were almost all over 6 feet at 14 years old. It was insane.
Yeah.
So I got invited to come up, and I went up, and being a total introvert and super shy and absolutely terrified going up there.
And super skinny.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting up there, and there's Zach is like the captain, and he's like super extroverted and like, come on guys. And I was like, holy crap. But you took me under your wing, and that was the first time we met. And I was like, well, this guy's kind of cool, And then next year I was at Vanier, and we saw a lot of each other. So.
Yeah, I kind of vaguely remember it. I remember you getting my jersey. I had to give my jersey. I handed my jersey down to you.
Yeah.
Because I had a football injury and was sitting out the rest of the season, kind of thing. And, we talk about injury. You talk about injuries and seeing people injured. I am a total candidate of that. I had so many injuries. I didn't really know how. I was growing into a 6'6" man, and was tall and lean and always in pain. A lot of lateral movements, a lot of explosive movements. For a growing body, it's like not the best combination of things. And then throwing myself all over the place too, right? In volleyball for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing with kids, especially taller kids. They'll go through these big growth spurts, and sometimes all their structures won't keep up. They won't all grow at the same time. So I was like that. I mean, I remember being in absolute pain in junior high school because I grew 6 inches. And I was that kid whose knees were bigger than his thighs and having to wear knee braces, and my heels hurt. And but I liked playing sports so much that I kind of just sucked it up and kept going, and we just kind of did what we could with it. But again, that's where the weights kind of helped out, building up the strength of the muscles to support those growing joints and bones and stuff.
So when you took off, moving through your sports career, did you have injuries?
I had a couple, but they were not related really to the sports I was playing. I blew my ankles out a couple times, but they were silly things. Like I remember playing in a spring league basketball and driving the lane, and a kid was going to take the charge and chickened out, so backed out, but left his foot in, and I stepped on his foot and blew my ankle out.
Yeah,
and then I remember another time playing soccer, and the local field wasn't really looked after very well. There were some potholes in it, and all they did was took loose gravel, like really fine gravel, and filled in the holes instead of filling it with hard turf. And I was backpedaling, and then I went and I stepped in one of these holes, and I went to turn and push off, and my cleat caught the inside of the edge, and I pushed off my foot sideways, and again blew my other ankle out. So it was mostly that. But I never had in volleyball, a lot of the guys had bursitis and recurring shoulder injuries and all kinds of stuff like that, and I never had a problem. I didn't understand it at the time. And in basketball, it was lots of knees and backs that were really sore. And again, I never had that problem. I never had any major knee injuries or shoulder injuries or anything.
It's interesting because I made the transition after, I think I was 16, made it into basketball and started basketball as my primary sport. And the injuries just kind of went away.
Yeah.
Like it was more tuned to my body type and more straight and straightforward and better training.
Yeah.
It was just, there was a lot. And, you know, that's not anybody's fault. It's just the game of volleyball is really tough on you.
For sure. The other thing with the basketball too is you're a big dude. You'd probably play post. So there's not.
Yeah, I was power forward. I mean.
Yeah, so you just stay down low and start banging bodies.
Yeah.
It's not
cracking noggins.
Yeah, it's not like the game today where it's just dribble down the court and shoot a three. You had to get into the big guy and they'd be hammering on each other, but there wasn't a lot of.
Yeah, it was super physical.
Movement. Yeah.
But it was just more suited to me.
Yeah.
And okay, so you continue your journey into being a gym owner.
So I worked out through high school. After high school, I went to university and played junior varsity at UVic for a couple of years. And again, was one of the only guys that would hit the weight room regularly. For volleyball, especially, the lifting weights wasn't a major thing. It was kind of like stay in shape, lots of plyometrics and stuff like that. And again, I was one of the only guys that was pretty injury free. After second year, I realized that there was no career for me in that. I loved sports. I absolutely loved them. In my heart, I wanted to be a professional athlete of some kind, but I just didn't have the talent for it. So when I stopped playing, there was a massive void in my life because I'd been playing organized sports since I was about 6 years old. I think my parents got me started in soccer when I was 6, and I just loved it. I loved every minute of it. Like I said, I loved practice. I loved doing drills. I loved games. I loved every aspect of sports. So I needed to fill that void with something physical. Otherwise, I'd kind of go crazy. I was being challenged intellectually at university, but not physically. And so I just started going to the gym more and figuring it out as best as I could. There wasn't a lot of information available back then. The internet was kind of just starting up and nobody really knew what to do with it. In fact, even at university, you couldn't use it as a reference for essay papers and stuff like that. So the best I had were the magazines you get at the grocery store, you know, like Muscle and Fitness and Men's Health, and most of that was just bodybuilding. And I'm like, look, I don't want to do that, but it's the only information I had available. So I just kind of kept doing that. It just became a hobby of mine, just going to the gym and lifting and trying different things and asking questions as much as possible. I was about 185 pounds at 6'2", right up until probably my early 30s. Yeah, that's when I kind of got into doing CrossFit. And what ended up happening was I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was traveling quite a bit. So I'd spent a year traveling around Australia and Southeast Asia and stuff. Came back. The plan was to travel again. So I was working bartending and still going to the gym. Had no idea what I wanted to do.
You didn't want to use that English lit degree.
Well, I tried. The problem is it was just the wrong timing, kind of like everything else, right? I mean, I graduated university. My goal was I actually wanted to get into the book publishing industry, and a book a few years before I graduated came out and said the last book you'll ever read, because it was showing people that the internet was the way that things were going to go. And so publishing companies, like people were able to publish their own books at certain points. And so publishing companies were kind of like on the downswing, and I couldn't get work anywhere. I even offered to intern for free and work for free just to get experience. I still got turned down. So it just wasn't happening, and I was kind of aimless after that. I didn't know really what I wanted to do. So again, the constant was always just working out for me. If I could keep my body there and I was always a search to challenge myself mentally. Eventually, I went traveling. So then I went traveling to Australia. A friend of my college roommate was a teacher, and it was the same thing for him. He couldn't get work. There was just nobody was hiring at the time. So a friend of his had gone to Australia to get experience. He says, "Hey, do you want to come with me?" I only had about $3,000 in my bank account, but I thought, sure, why not? I got nothing else going on here, and so my whole purpose was just to go there and surf and check out Australia.
Girls.
Yeah. Well, that's always a motivation.
That's a given.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I got back from Australia, was planning on traveling again. Then I met my wife, so girls. And I didn't, so things kind of got put on hold because I was just, we're bartending to earn money to go. And then I met this girl. I'm like, wow, she's pretty awesome. I kind of want to hang out and see where this goes. But I started to hate bartending. And she's like, well, why are you doing that? And I said, I don't know. I was planning on traveling. And she's like, well, you're going to still travel? And I said, well, no, I kind of want to stick around and see where this goes. And it was her idea. I mean, I had kind of played with the idea of maybe getting into personal training because it interested me. I thought, well, why not? It's my hobby. Why not learn more about it? And she actually mentioned, because we were going to the gym together, she goes, well, how come you don't get into personal training? I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, well, every time I go to the gym, the personal trainers are always asking you questions. And you read about it all the time, and you're constantly researching and looking for different things and looking at the cutting edge stuff. Why don't you do that? And so I said, yeah, why don't I? And so I went and got my personal training certification and was totally disappointed with it because it was, again, just all about the bodybuilding stuff. And I'm like, well, there's got to be more to it than this. There's not everything there is to do with it. And so I started working at gyms and always looking for something new, and started, again, the internet was becoming really big, and I kept, every time I would search for different things, this CrossFit stuff kept coming up. And I saw this little guy, Pat Barber, do this workout called 2-minute defense, where it's 1 power clean, 3 front squats, and 2 push presses with 135 pounds, and you sprint out to a marker 50 feet out and back, and you do that for 5 rounds. You take a 2-minute rest, and you repeat it for 5 rounds. And I thought, that's really different. I've never seen cardio and weights and stuff combined all at once like that, except for a circuit training, but that's usually see that in like a women's aerobics class. So I thought, I want to try it. So there I was in the back of the gym. We're back where the squat racks were that nobody used because everyone leg pressed and did machines mostly. And
those were great days. They were so easy.
There was a back door in this alleyway and behind the gym. And I was working at the gym. I had the reputation of being the fittest guy in the gym for whatever that meant. I put nothing in that. But I thought, I want to try this. And every time I try something new, I generally have a bunch of people come around and watch. They're like, well, there's Mark doing some crazy stuff again. What's he doing? So I opened the back door, and there was a dumpster about 50 feet down the alleyway. And there's a stairwell down to the alleyway and then out to the dumpster. So I set up in the back corner. They didn't have bumper plates, so you couldn't drop the weights, not like now where everybody has bumper plates and dropping it. So I had to be really careful with it because I knew the owners would lose their mind if I dropped metal plates on the floor, and rightly so. So I start in on this thing, and people start to notice, and they come back to watch me, and I'm thinking, oh, great. Like, I've got an audience and doing something I've never done before. This is nerve-wracking, and I thought, hey, this isn't so bad. I kind of like the different movements. I'm sitting there in the 2 minutes. People are asking me questions while I'm staring at the timer, and I'm kind of answering them as best as I can because I was pretty ignorant to the fact of what CrossFit was. And the timer beeps for me to go, and so I start to do the next round, and I realize I'm not feeling so good. And I'm running down the back stairs, and I get out to the dumpster, and it was a hot summer day, and I get a big whiff of hot summer day dumpster smell. And when you're huffing and puffing, you almost swallow the air, right? You're swallowing this nasty smelling air, and I'm like, oh man. I start to go a little green. I make it up the stairs. I get in, and I do the next one, and now there's a bunch of people watching me, and I'm just trying to choke down the throw up. It was nasty. And I run out there, get another big mouthful of garbage smell. I'm halfway up the stairs, and I just start projectile vomiting all over the back alley off the stairwell. People are just shaking their head, and they're looking at me and like, oh my God, why would you do that? That's nuts. And all I could think about was, I got this reputation of being the fittest guy. How come I'm throwing up doing this simple 10-minute workout? Like, what's going on? So the fact that I couldn't do it piqued my interest, and I just started learning more and more.
I love that.
More and more about it, and it became interesting. And I'm like, wow, this is a really different approach to exercise. This methodology is really different. Like, nothing out there was kind of like it. So it kind of piqued my interest, and I got into it. And from there, I started to learn about all kinds of different ways of training. So I always joke that CrossFit's kind of a gateway drug because it gives you a little taste of everything. And then almost anybody can find something that they're like, oh, this is my jam. I really like this. Or, either that or I'm really good at this. And so it opened the door to me to weightlifting, calisthenics training with a gymnastics type approach, powerlifting, all kinds of different things. And so I started all these, back then they had all these gurus that were like the strength guru and the weightlifting guru and the gymnastics guru and the kettlebell guru and the nutrition guru. So I started reading those guys, and then it kind of just goes down the rabbit hole. All of a sudden you start branching off from these guys and learning different things. And I thought, wow, there's way more out there than, what you would normally see in a traditional gym. It's just that people don't know about it. Now with the growth and popularity of something like CrossFit, a lot of that's becoming known. And so you're seeing sports like Olympic style weightlifting and powerlifting, especially raw powerlifting, have this huge influx of athletes because almost anybody can do it, especially if you've been exposed to it slightly, because you're always exposed a little bit during this. And it's kind of cool to see, because now you've got people with all these different goals and realize that it's not just trying to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's achievable fitness goals that have numbers to them. I want to be able to lift X number of pounds, or I want to be able to achieve, X, Y, and Z skills. I want to be able to walk on my hands, or I want to be able to do a muscle up, or super simple stuff. I get people that are like, I want to be able to do a full push-up. I want to learn how to do a pull-up, stuff like that, which is interesting to me, that such basic movements we lose, and at any age you can, attain them again. So that's kind of what led me into that. And I was doing these workouts at this gym, and the gym owners were pretty good for the most part, but they really didn't understand it that much. They were getting mad at me. They're like, you're not going to, we advertise that, you're one of the fittest guys in town. I'm like, well, I don't know that that's true, but
why? What's the benefit of even advertising that you're
to try and get people in to work with me, and look, our gym's awesome because we've got the fittest guy in town. And
wow,
it was kind of strange to me. But they didn't get the idea of what I was shooting for. I was trying to look for something different. I was looking for something outside the norms or the boundaries of the normal, because the normal was boring. And again, something to challenge me intellectually so I could learn, and physically as well. And we were getting to little tiffs here and there, and our ideologies didn't really match up. And I remember my wife saying to me, look, you're really not happy. You're coming home and you're upset and you're frustrated and you're not getting to do what you want to do. Why don't you just open up your own gym? Like it was something simple. And I'm like, well, no, that's not how it works. She goes, well, you said your ideal would be to have like some kind of garage gym where you could just train people the way you wanted to. Why not just do that? I'm like, well, because that's a 5-year plan. It's only been 1 year. And she looks at me and goes, so? So I started to explore stuff. I went and got my CrossFit certification and learned a lot more. And
who were your first coaches for your certification?
For CrossFit, it was awesome. It was a who's who of sort of OG CrossFitters that I didn't realize. It was funny. It's like it's like never ever seeing a Hollywood movie and going to the Oscars and be like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. These people are nice. And not realizing that until years later that who these people would become. And it was Pat Sherwood was kind of the main MC guy for it.
Yeah.
And then Rob Wolf was the nutrition guy, who's a crazy intelligent guy. And we had Dutch Lowy, who was a CrossFit Games competitor. And we had Curtis Bowler, who still owns Rainier CrossFit. And Nadia Chantilla, who owns, I'm not sure, I think it's Bell City CrossFit in Seattle. But it was fantastic. They were all, and John Gilson, who started Again Faster. I think he's since sold it, but like these really big companies and these big name guys within CrossFit, anyone outside of CrossFit would have no idea who they are. But Pat Sherwood was always on was one of the announcers on the desk for CrossFit Games and stuff like that.
For a long time.
Yeah.
If not still.
All really, really awesome people. And it was the one that stood out to me the most was, again, I was in a situation like with the World's Strongest Man stuff where I didn't fit. World's Strongest Man are these enormous dudes, and I'm this kind of semi-tall, skinny guy.
I'd say well proportioned.
Well, yeah, for a lot of work over time though. But anyways, then I'm at CrossFit and it's all these really short, stocky guys. I'm like, I don't fit, man. And then I watched Curtis Bowler, and they would screw around at lunchtime just for fun because it was supposed to be fun. It was like little kids playing, where, hey man, I bet you can't pick that rock up sort of thing, right? And they had this huge tire at the CrossFit gym that I was doing my certification at with a bunch of other people. And they bet Curtis that he couldn't overhead squat it. So he had to hold it over his head and squat into a full squat and stand up with this big friggin' tire. And I watched him do it. It took 4 guys to pick it up and put it into place so he could have his hands on it so he could try and overhead squat it. And I watched him overhead squat it. I'm like, damn, maybe I do belong here because I relate to that guy. I want to do that. And so it was really cool to watch him do that. And ironically enough, I had to recertify back in 2016. And Curtis Bowler was the head guy at that cert. And sitting down with him at lunch one time after, I'm like, hey, can I talk to you? And he said, sure. I'm like, I just want you to know that you were at my very first CrossFit cert back in 2008. And he's like, oh, geez, it was that long ago? And I go, yeah. And I go, you're the reason why I got pumped about CrossFit, because I'm watching all these other guys and they're these tiny guys. And I'm like, man, I just don't fit. I don't belong here. I was looking for, someone who looked like me doing this thing that I was watching people do on, the internet. And they weren't there except for this one big guy. And so I was saying to him, you really inspired me to keep going with CrossFit. And, back then I opened up a CrossFit gym, was my first gym, because it was easy access. It was like minimalist equipment, and you could open it up kind of on a shoestring budget. I think I went and got a line of credit at the bank, and I opened up my gym for like $15,000, which sounds like a lot of money, but I mean, I'm listening to guys and they're opening gyms now for $100,000. And
sure.
I just had a bunch of barbells, some bumper plates, some pull-up bars. I built half the equipment in the gym with my parents. I remember the night before we opened, sitting in my parents' backyard with like sheet after sheet of plywood, building plyo boxes so that we could open the next day. It was nuts. My mom saying, what do you expect to do with these things? Because again, they didn't quite get it. My mom had exercised since the day I was born, but she goes, what do you expect people to do with these boxes? I'm like, they jump on it. She goes, Mark, nobody's gonna be able to jump on that. I said, for sure they can. She's like, no, how tall is that? I'm like, 20 inches. I'm like, absolutely they can jump on it. You could. She's like, I don't know about that. And so I said, try it. So there we are in the back lawn. Mom takes her shoes off and I'm convincing her to jump onto a 20-inch plyo box, and she did it no problem. She's like, oh, okay. And then the next day she was the first person to show up for the gym, which was pretty cool. So in essence, it was my wife really kind of inspired me and pushed me to open up my gym, and from there on she's just been nothing but support. So maybe it was good I didn't go traveling and I stuck around to see where things went with her.
It worked out pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been able to take your desire to learn and your ability to learn and just dive deep into it. And I think that's what's really interesting about you finding CrossFit or powerlifting and all these disciplines that are kind of tied up in it, because you are one of the most knowledgeable people that I know, having researched every methodology I think out there, and you're still learning. We often talk about stuff that you've learned when we run into each other, but it's impressive to me. And the other big component is that you do it. You do it, which is so different than a lot of definitely like the cliche trainer, kind of stereotype. Like, you're not a stereotypical trainer to me at all. You got really into powerlifting as well, and you did powerlifting, and you went to a pretty high level, I think, like in Canada. As who the heck powerlifts, but I mean, that's impressive. Like being able to walk the talk and also put everything you're reading into practice.
Yeah.
I know for me that was really inspiring, and definitely the other people in the gym for sure. But I think it's like, you're so soft spoken and you're like, no, you're the last guy to toot your own horn. And I think coming to a gym like yours opens a whole world to people. And it's just your knowledge and your humility and also your ability. Like, you're doing it, man. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I never want to be that guy that always just said, do as I say, not as I do. So it was always, I never wanted to be a hypocrite. So if I was ever going to ask anybody to do anything in the gym, I had to have done it first. So no matter what, right now the CrossFit Open's going on, I make sure I'm the first guy in here before anyone comes in, and I'm doing the workout first. So I get an idea of what it feels like. When I'm doing it, I'm not doing it for me. So I'm not doing it to get the best possible score. I don't really participate in the Open anymore as an athlete. I'm much more valuable as a coach and sort of a mentor to the people doing it. So when I do it and take different strategies, and I think about all the people that have signed up for the CrossFit Open and are going to do this workout later in the day, and how best they would navigate it and what kind of approach they would take. I don't know. I think it was Louis Simmons. He's a powerlifting coach. He said, if you are unable to coach people to go beyond what you were capable of achieving, then you failed as a coach. And so I kind of take that to heart. I always want people to do way better than I did in anything. And so part of that is not getting caught in the trappings that I got caught up. So don't make my mistakes. It's kind of like a parent-child thing, right? With your kid, you're trying to teach them, don't do this because these are the mistakes I made. I'm trying to give you the best chance to go farther. And that's essentially what a coach should be. It's almost a weird, even if your athletes are older than you, it's almost like a parent-child instruction relationship where you're like, okay, this is where you want to go. This is how you get there. But you have to have kind of walked that path a little bit first, and you have to be able to have put yourself in that person's shoes to see where they're coming from and how they're going to make it down that path. Because what I've learned is not everybody, it takes you to your 40s to learn that not everybody's like you. Not everybody thinks the same way. Not everybody feels the same way. And that matters. And understanding that matters a lot, because it depends on what your inner voice is saying to you. So I was talking about that with one of the members here. He said his wife's inner voice is always, you can't do that, immediately. So he was saying that, being here and being forced to do some of the stuff that I'm asking her to do, starting to change that voice a little bit. Whereas another friend of mine that comes here, we were talking about inner voice as well. It's really weird. We're talking about the same thing with different people the last little while, but he was always saying that his inner voice is like, come on, you can do it. You can do it. Constant positive reinforcement. And he asks me, he goes, I don't know what your inner voice is like, because I watch you do these crazy things and you're really quiet all the time. And my inner voice is always like, pick that up and quit being a pussy.
It's like David Goggins. Or
yeah, just pick it up. I don't care if it hurts. Pick it up is my mental thing. So you can't possibly ask other people to do that. That's ridiculous, because you're basically torturing them at that point. So you have to understand what their inner voice is saying to them, and slowly but surely change that to a more positive, affirmative thing. Whereas it's not, I can't do that. It's like, okay, I'm going to try and see where that goes, to all of a sudden, yeah, for sure I can do that, is what eventually is that arc that it goes on. It's unbelievable. I get a lot of people in here who's like, I can't do that. My mom, for crying out loud, very first time, I think she'd trust me. She's my mother. And she goes, Mark, people can't do that. I'm like, sure they can, with the box jump. But taking that voice that says, I can't do that, to, we'll see, to, my training that I've done or what I've done in preparation for this activity suggests I can do it, to hell yeah, I can do that. It's slow and it's hard, but some people it's easier to do than others. But again, just putting yourself in that person's shoes and figuring out what it takes for that person to walk the path, not, okay, for me to get there, I took this way. Well, that's fine, but you're not the same as that person. They're different than you. So what does it take for that person to walk that path and get to that destination? It may look a little different. Their path may be a little bit different, but they'll still get to that destination if you put yourself in their shoes and understand where they're coming from and, what their motivations are and what that inner voice to them sounds like.
I'm thinking about how much fitness has changed, and probably the type of people that come through the doors because of the internet. It was super rare to see a woman with muscles in 2008. And now it's like, of course you want to have muscles, and I really personally love that. I know you do too. Yeah. And seeing the ability, and the internet has really kind of changed our perception, hopefully, and what people want for themselves, and knowing what is possible for them. Mm-hmm. When people come through the door for the first time, what are some of the things that they want?
Well, you get the classic. I mean, almost always the underlying thing is LGN. Every single time. LGNs look good naked, right? I mean, come on. We're humans. We're a little vain. We're a little narcissistic.
Little vain?
Yeah.
Come on.
Come on, we got to be PC with it. But that's always an aspect of it. But I mean, I read an interesting book a little while ago called Lift, and they talk about the evolution of fitness and what is it that we want over the years, how it's changed, how it's been influenced by religion and politics and science and whatnot, and how they started. Essentially, it's in Western civilization, but they do mention some of some Eastern philosophies, although it's not the primary thing of the book. How in ancient Greece, that muscles and muscularity on a person, both male and female, wasn't just indicative. It wasn't just a vanity thing. It was to a certain extent, but it wasn't just that. It was indicative of what that person could accomplish with a body like that, physically. The other aspects of it were, I mean, everyone was supposed to be able to fight in a war if a war happened, and so having a fit, athletic, strong, muscular body suggested they'd be more adept at warfare.
Or surviving.
Yeah, for sure. And how that started to go away, especially as religion came into it, and also the pursuit of intelligence and intellectual pursuits. So why would you waste life essence or life energy on pure vanity when you should be going for intellectual pursuits or religious pursuits or whatever? How it became an either-or thing. My favorite thing, I mean, again, it took me to my 40s to realize this, is why it can be both. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be either or. Almost nothing has to be either or. It can be both. You know, you could have a good person do shitty things, or you could have a shitty person occasionally do good things. You know, it can be both, but you don't neglect one because of the other. It's not an either or situation. So it can be vanity, but you can pursue that physical prominence as well as the intellectual ideas as well. That it's not a waste of time either way. In fact, they both support one another. And again, that's been proven time and time again that,
Sure.
You know, physical activity increases all these biological aspects in your body that help your body and your brain function at a higher level and function better than it was before. I mean,
it gives you confidence in a group, and that gives more stronger relationships and
yeah, absolutely.
Like this, just on and on and on.
Yeah.
Cascade.
So almost like going back to sort of like trying to be a Renaissance man, right? You want to be a well-rounded human being. You don't want to just be that empty shell who has big muscles and looks good naked, right? You also want to be an intelligent person, but that intelligent person doesn't have to be the stereotypical, you know, scrawny, frail, egghead-looking guy with the big horn-rimmed glasses and the pocket protector and has no physical presence. You can be both. You know, it can be both at the same time.
Yeah, totally. So what other look good naked?
Yeah.
Oh, what else are people looking for?
Just different things. I mean, usually the typical is it all falls into the look good naked. I want to lose a few pounds. It's usually general. It's never specific until I force them to pick a specific goal. Like I want to be fitter. Well, what does that mean to you? What is fitter? What denotes that you're fitter? You want to, run a 6-minute mile, or do you want to get down to 10% body fat? Or, I mean, there's got to be specific numbers to things that for your goals. If it's just a general goal, the chances are that you'll never achieve it because that's what I was trying to achieve. What does fitter mean? In CrossFit, is it a faster Fran time? Is it in powerlifting, is it a 500-pound deadlift? In weightlifting, is it a 200-pound clean and jerk? What does that mean? What does fitter mean to you? Give me a number and we'll work towards that. Essentially what ends up happening is all the LGN stuff happens as a nice byproduct to picking specific goals. I always say, train as an athlete. You look at, an NFL wide receiver. He's in the gym and working out and training to get better at his sport and be better on his field of play. It's just a really nice byproduct of what he does that he ends up looking muscular and lean and looking good. So think of yourself as an athlete. Pick a specific athletic goal that you want to accomplish. Just like when we did that Road to Sparta thing with you, and you came to me, and your initial goal was, I want to lose about 60 pounds, right? And I said, okay, well, pick a specific goal. And it was, I want to run this far in this time. I want to, lift this amount of weight. And when we started focusing on, I want to run this far, for this amount of time and lift this amount of weight, what happened? You lost 60 pounds in I think it was less than 6 months, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was probably 4 months or something. It was 10 pounds a week or something. It was at one point.
And that wasn't our focus.
Yeah. And you know what's incredible is I can do that again.
Yeah.
I can lose kind of 10 pounds at will if really that's what I want to do.
For sure. Yeah.
It's cool learning. Yeah, that's a good skill. So people will find a lot of success with that.
Yeah, I mean, part of it too is not understanding what the work feels like to do that. So what does that mean? How does that feel? How do I get there? A people don't know what that is because they haven't experienced it, right? I mean, do you know what it feels like? You know what it feels like to lose 60 pounds, and you know what you have to do to it.
Yeah.
Most people don't. I mean, other people who've lost 60 pounds maybe do, but the vast majority of people who haven't done that have no idea what that feels like or what kind of work that has to go in. You know, and mentally, what does that do? Because there's some mental changes that happen with that too, and how you relate to people. And what you'll notice is people around you will relate to you differently as well.
Big time.
We had a lot of talk about that. I remember.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I remember saying to you, you were super psyched because you're starting to lose weight. You're really happy with how things were going. Your numbers were taking off. We were having a blast.
I was getting strong. I was on my way to the CrossFit Games, basically. the way my gains were going, I was like, I'll be in the games next year.
Yeah, and breaking world records at the Olympics the following year, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In decathlon.
Yeah. But I remember having a conversation with you because you're super psyched. You're like, oh man, everyone's so supportive. I'm like, yeah, that's great. Understand that may not happen through the duration. And you're like, what do you mean? My friends are great. My family's great. Everyone's great. The constant optimist versus the constant pessimist, right?
That's why we're so good together.
Yeah,
Mike.
I said, well, what's going to happen is because of your habit changes, people who are used to you being a certain way are going to start to resent you for making a change because the first 10 pounds or the first 20 pounds maybe seems easy to them, but all of a sudden you're losing enormous amounts of weight and succeeding at such a high level that I don't know whether it's jealousy or what, but there tends to be this resentment. I've seen it time and time again where you're not the same person, you're not this. And what I figure is it's a reflection of I'm not able to, or I don't think I'm able to do that. How come he can do it? And I know him and he's making it look easy. Is it really that easy? And then they resent you for it. And you ended up facing that a little bit from people you were surprised.
A lot.
Yeah.
I face it a lot. I think a lot of people look at them like we have relationships with people that are fairly well established. And when you look at somebody, you see yourself back.
Yeah.
And when that person changes, you're seeing yourself differently.
Yeah.
And you're looking at yourself going, oh, wow, this person is having all the success. And this is kind of where, when I'm seeing somebody else successful now,
Yeah.
I really fight that urge because I think it's really natural in a lot of people. I really fight that urge of, oh, I'm jealous for that person or of that person, or, oh, I wish I had that. If only I had $1 million, I could do something too. Instead, it's like celebrating a person at every chance that you can, you know? But that is that syndrome where, you know, and I experienced that from the closest people in my circle.
Yeah.
And it was tough.
Well, it was shocking to you too, because you didn't expect it to happen.
No.
And it was, to be honest, it was slightly shocking to me too, with the people that were coming out with that. And I'm like, I think what it does is that where the jealousy comes from is it maybe you think, why can't I do that when you really can? And it maybe reflects, like it's that evil funhouse mirror, right? That you're looking into, and it's reflecting maybe your flaws or your shortcomings that you're really insecure about. And it's mostly your insecurities that you're seeing in yourself and that other person, because they're seeming to be able to get through that. But again, they don't know, they're not you. They don't know what that feels like. They're seeing the byproduct of that instead.
Yeah. Yeah, it was shocking. I think it's an interesting phenomenon that still I battle with in a lot of different arenas as well. And I'm not, you know, I'm not being egocentric here. I mean, this is kind of anytime you make a change, people are going to react in anything.
Yeah.
And that is, sometimes you gotta rail against that, but it comes a point where it's like, what is it worth?
Yeah.
What's it worth sacrificing? Is it worth sacrificing this person? You know, that happened. That happened lots, actually. And it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just about trimming the friend tree a little bit too. And what you've come down to is how many people are actually really supportive and like you for you, regardless of what it is that you're know, maybe doing or changing or going through. Who's really supportive, you know? And that's important, because I think sometimes I've never been super into popularity. You know, maybe this is my introverted, pessimistic stuff. It always seemed like so much work that I didn't want to put into.
You're pretty introverted. I'll give you that. Like,
but
That's fair.
Maybe like with that, maybe it's about the quality of the people that you surround you with, and how are they going to support you and lift you up. But when they see you start to succeed, at what level are they going to get jealous and try and tear you down? You know what I mean? That a true friend's not going to do that. They're going to build you up and be like, yeah, keep going, man. You're killing it. And that's what you kind of want around you. So sometimes it's that double-edged sword. Also, we're human beings, man. We screw up all the time. We're not perfect. We all have our different thoughts. We all have our different backgrounds and our different influences, and that plays into things really big. And just because someone gets into something or takes off with something, like with you with your weight loss, and that's maybe not someone else's jam, that it doesn't make either of them a bad person. If they don't support you, maybe they don't understand it. I mean, maybe they are just a shitty person, who knows? But I highly doubt that. I don't think there's a lot of shitty people out there. I think that sometimes we just don't combine well with others, or, you know, again, like that, when I turned 40 and he gave me that book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And it talks about totally. You only have control over how you react to things. You have no control over anything else. So it says more about you, how you react to something, than what's actually going on. I think it has a lot to do with that. And like that, in that book, he says to err is human, right? And we're all human, so we screw up a lot. So
that's how we learn.
Yeah. I mean, without that failure, you think everything's a success, and that's not necessarily true. There has to be a lot. And sometimes those failures are hugely beneficial. I mean, think about all of the, you know, cures and stuff that got invented or discovered simply because somebody screwed up an experiment, right? They planned to do one thing, they totally screwed it up, it didn't happen, but then they found this other thing that was really great, you know?
Totally.
So, I mean...
The only one I can think of is Viagra. The guy's like, all I see is purple, and I have an erection.
Yeah.
This is great blood or whatever it was, blood pressure medication or something, you know?
Yeah.
No, it's so true. And then I kind of went through it again. You know, it's funny because I feel even prior to that, I had a self-image of being this athlete in my mind. And I think a lot of athletes get kind of stuck in that rut of like, oh, this is what I've always been able to do. You get kind of caught in the past. Yeah. And I listened to Steve Nash talking about this after he finished, because, you know, Steve Nash, 2-time MVP in the NBA, an incredible athlete, came from our, you know, Vancouver Island. Mm-hmm. And Steve was saying he just had such a great attitude when he left the game, because he was like, okay, that chapter's over. And now what am I working on? Yeah. And I think a lot of people and athletes aren't able to go have the resources they need to be able to make that transition.
Yeah.
And, you know, you mentioned that where you were like kind of wandering around lost and not really sure after sports or university. And I definitely had that. I was like, I really missed the collegial aspect of sports. And I had so many injuries and also going through, you know, undiagnosed heart issue that I, you know, am still carrying now from the age of 16. And how that affects your ability to transition through these chapters in your life, I think is really something, and gaining it back. And I think that's why I was surprised when people were angry at me for succeeding.
Yeah.
Because I had this image that I was a succeeder.
Yeah.
Like I've suffered from a vast amount of ego and personal success, and having the opportunities, the incredible opportunity to be able to do whatever I want, that I've always seen myself as somebody who's successful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the luckiest guy alive. I mean, I put it on my Facebook.
Yeah, sure.
And truly I feel that. And I think it's weird when people are like, oh, you're luckier than me. But I mean, when it's your own family too, and they're like, oh, I don't know, you look a little thin, or you look, you know, but it's funny how everyone wants to comment on it, on the change.
Yeah.
And all I ever wanted actually is bigger ass cheeks so that my pants didn't fall down.
I remember that. And we made you lunge and deadlift a lot. Yeah.
That's all I wanted.
But we failed at that.
I know. Like genetics are like holding me back
Yeah.
to the nth degree. And my pants still fall down. Like,
all the time.
Even worse. I'm the shape of an ice cream cone. No matter what. Like, it doesn't matter kind of how in shape I am or not. Mm-hmm. It's like my hips are too small.
Yeah. Could be worse.
Okay, so it's so intimidating to come into the gym. So do you find anybody who just walks in and feels good about where they are, or is it
pretty rare? It's not often that people are like, okay, I need to get in shape. And so they start cracking open books, and God forbid they go on the internet and they start researching it, because on the internet, for however many X number of things you tell you to do one way, there's just as many to tell you that that's wrong and you should do it this way. So you're like, well, what the hell do I do? It's paralysis by analysis, right? So almost everybody comes in not necessarily feeling great. They're all intimidated. They're all nervous. And it's because it's the unknown. You don't know what to expect when you walk in the door. You've not tested yourself, so you don't know what it is that you can or can't do. And generally, if there's something wrong, you don't feel good about that, right? You don't feel good about... People come in and they think they're fit, and they come in and I run them through the baseline test, which is super simple. It's just some rowing and some body weight stuff, and they're dying during it. Like, they're huffing and puffing, and I'm like, it's okay, take your time. It's not... we're just trying to see where you're at and give you a taste of what some of the workouts would look like. And it's kind of an assessment, and they get to try it out to see if it's something that they like. I've had women break down and start crying and think, oh God, I thought I was in shape. All of those, boot camps or aerobics classes or spin classes or whatever they were doing was such a waste of time. I'm like,
Zumba? What about the Zumba?
Well, sure. It absolutely wasn't a waste of time. It gave you a base, and you're better off than you were for having not done it, than if you had not done it. It's just that our expectations are different on what it is we want to see you achieve. And slowly but surely people build up. I mean, I'm not an interior decorator. Like I said, so the gym...
I couldn't tell. It looks so...
Yeah, Russian prison-y, right? Yeah, it's like you're Soviet era, like gulag. But I didn't want that to be the main thing. You know what I mean? I wanted people to come in, and I wanted them to not have distractions and just be able to come in and work on themselves. The number one thing too with coming into the gym is everyone's worried about judgment, and it's like, well, people are going to be watching me. And what they very quickly realize is nobody's watching you. Everybody's in the same boat where they're trying to improve themselves, and they're too focused on themselves.
Away in the pain cave.
Yeah, but there's, even a regular gym for the most part, like I said, there's always assholes no matter where you go. If you get enough people together, they're not watching you. You know what I mean? They're busy focusing on what they're doing. They're feeling almost as insecure as you are, especially if there's no instructor or coach or anything, because like, oh my God, am I doing this right? Or, why am I doing this? I saw this in a magazine. I hope nobody asks me. And it's all these things that are firing through their heads. What each person doesn't realize is that everybody's doing that. And so that insecurity should just go away, because everyone's doing that. They're not focused on you. They're busy worried about if they're doing it right. The best thing that I saw was there's a documentary on Netflix with Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine. Have you seen that one? They talk about the Beats by Dre and how they sold it for like $3.2 billion and where they came from. Jimmy Iovine is fantastic. I mean, listening to him talk about business and goal setting and where you're going to go is amazing. But he talks about, he's like, be a goddamn racehorse. He goes, you know why they put blinders on racehorses? Because if they look left and right, they're going to trip and fall. There's only one goal, and it's straight ahead. So don't look at what the people next to you are doing.
Right.
You have your goal. Look straight ahead at that. Put the blinders on and put your head down and go for that goal as hard as you can. And it'll look after itself. But put the blinders on. It's when you start trying to look around while you're running towards your goal that you're going to stumble and fall, because you're not paying attention to what you should be doing. You're watching what other people are doing. And I'm like, man, that's so true. And here I see that all the time. Well, so-and-so is doing this, so-and-so is doing that. So, you're not so-and-so. You got to focus on what you're doing. What's your goal? Why are you doing it? Focus on that, and everything will look after itself. And you'll progress at a much faster rate. So stop comparing yourself to other people. Because like I said before too, you're not that person. You don't think the same way. You don't feel the same way. Even if you're similar, you still don't. It's different. It's different for every person. So keep in your lane and put your blinders on and just charge that goal and go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a great environment here, especially because, the CrossFit Games and CrossFit to me are totally a dichotomy.
Yeah, I see the value of the idea of competition, but the competition should be with oneself, not with the people around them, right? If you got 10 push-ups in a push-up competition last time, then you should get 11 this time, or try and shoot for 11, because that you just chip away at it. That's how you get better. You just be a little bit better each time, and over time you end up being a lot better. CrossFit Games is great. I love the CrossFit Games.
Me too. Don't get me wrong. I love
fantastic to watch, because it's watching some of the fittest people on earth do some of the craziest stuff, and at a really, really high level, and it's entertaining. It's the same reason why people in ancient Rome went to watch gladiators, and why we watch professional sports. We want to see the best people at that specific activity do that.
Because we can go out and do the same thing.
Yeah, we can.
Right?
It's
and
just
see
not
how
the same.
We compete or compare.
It's not to the same level, but totally. I mean, if you and I want to go and learn how to play hockey, I can barely skate, by the way, but if we want to go and learn to play hockey, I'm not going to go into a learn to play hockey class and think that I'm going to play in the NHL. You know what I mean? It's the same idea. Those are high-level athletes. They were all fairly high-level athletes before they got to that level in some other sport, but they've worked hard, and they've trained like a professional athlete to get to that level. That's not what's expected of you when you walk into a gym at all, ever. It's about, like I said before, just trying to be a little bit better. If using a band-assisted pull-up, you're using a green band, which is a big, thick one, and you start off and you can get 1, and then, within a month you can get 10, and then maybe you go to a purple band. That's awesome. That's what we're shooting for. Or you're doing push-ups and you're doing knee push-ups. They're not girl push-ups. Exercises aren't gender specific. They're just knee push-ups, because I've had plenty of guys that aren't able to do full push-ups. So knee push-ups, you move to doing full push-ups, that's progress. That's awesome. That's, again, what we're shooting for. The competition thing, yeah, there's always going to be someone who smack talks. Like I said, you get enough people together, there's going to be some douchey people in that group. That always happens. It generally goes through cycles. Like you talked about with yourself, how you got to things were progressing pretty good, and you're like, oh, I'm going to the games, and and I joke that in a year or two you'll be breaking records at the Olympics. That's the psychology of that. I mean, all of a sudden you come in not being able to do anything, and then all of a sudden you break through that barrier where you've learned all the basics, and things just start to take off, and you're improving at an incredible rate. But that improvement doesn't last forever. And it doesn't mean you're going to reach that pinnacle of performance. So you have to stay humble. You always have to remember where you came from. So just because you're knocking out 20 bar muscle-ups in a row, don't forget that you started doing jumping pull-ups or banded pull-ups to start off with, just like those other people that are in the gym. So you're no better than they totally are, right? Everyone's on the same page, because everyone's been there, and everyone's can work up to different levels depending on what their desire is.
It was so fun. Like, it's just so fun making those crazy gains. And and to the point of, like, I'm doing that again. So a couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with AFib and supraventricular tachycardia.
Can you spell that?
Oh, God. SVT.
Sure.
And atrial flutter. Mm-hmm. And so when I was 16, playing on the provincial team, and had this attack playing, like we were training 6 hours a day, and I don't know what happened, but it felt like an asthma attack or something, but I couldn't move. I was pretty paralyzed. Didn't know what it was. Doctors all thought it was asthma. They gave me a puffer. Mm-hmm. I never used the puffer again. After the appointment, kind of went on, sports are fine. But after that moment, I always kind of had pain. I had my performance always capped. Yeah. I could never get past a certain point, and that was really frustrating, especially at like a high level. Mm-hmm. And in collegiate sports, I had offers to go to different universities for sports. And it is really interesting how it shifted my mindset of my self-image as well in that, because I was like, oh, wow, here I am. I have all the opportunity to go. And I'd make up these justifications like, it's too political, or it's all about the money now, or, I'm not able to play for the love of the game. Yeah. And it just felt, but there was this like kind of loss of myself as well, in that that's the only thing I love. Yeah. And also if I'm not if I'm not doing that to the best of my ability, am I letting myself down?
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of this beginning of this like kind of cascade of developing depression. You know, I was later diagnosed with bipolar 2 spectrum disorder, which is kind of like an up and a down in very fast time domains, because we're CrossFit. So we'll talk about time domains. And that went on for a long time and definitely really hit me in my 30s. And then when I had kids, I got super depressed. Yeah. And I think, you know, it was a big shift, like going from cosmopolitan traveling around the world guy to domestic dad. And that's when I started seeing you as a trainer. And it totally changed and gave me the ability to do all these things and kind of refine my superpowers and my love of the game. But it also started to expose that heart issue again. Yeah. And the same thing, like, began to limit on certain types of workouts. So I found that I could do like powerlifting kind of workouts. But I remember doing one where it was like box jumps, kettlebells, and push presses. Yeah. And it totally blew me open. And I, you know, like go right into the cave. But that was like heart issues. Yeah. And I was never one to back down. Right. Like, so I was just like driving through just the worst thing. Like here I'm having like my heart is like basically having electrical issues. Yeah. Healthy heart, but electrical. And so my heart rate was firing at like upwards of 260 or 280. Oh, wow. And my heartbeat was only going like maybe 160. Oh, wow. But all the electrical impulses were kind of like overwhelming. And I always thought later on how it got diagnosed was I was suffering from depression so severely and just living with it. And eventually it started presenting as what I thought were anxiety attacks. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So I thought I was having anxiety attacks like 3-4 days a week. Just sitting on my computer. I was doing a lot of really tough stuff at work. Yeah. Lots of accident investigations, dealing with a lot of bodies, dead bodies. Yeah. Messed up people. Thought I was compartmentalizing it really well. Thought I was doing a great job. But subconsciously, I knew there was something wrong because I kept having these panic attacks. And so the doctor started medicating me for depression. And at that point, that was really fun. and I'm still medicated for depression because it really worked for me. It really kind of brought me up to a level playing field. Yeah. So it's been great. However, the anxiety attacks didn't go away. And that's where he kind of had the smarts to say, man, this just doesn't seem right. Yeah. Like, you're healthy, you're fit, I was in really good shape. I was running I was doing two workouts a day at that time. No wonder I was having anxiety attacks. And he put a heart monitor on me. He brought it back. He got the results. He said, how was that? I said, I should wear a heart monitor every day because that was phenomenal. I had the best workout I've had in like 6 months. Yeah. And he's like, we don't know why you're alive right now. You should have, with numbers like this and with the way this chart looks, you should have died 10 years ago. Wow. Which is basically when I started working out. Yeah. And he said, the only reason you didn't have a stroke is because you were healthy. You weren't drinking a lot. You know, you don't smoke. You weren't eating bad. That's what saved you. Wow. And so you think of like just daily lifestyle. Like now and then I had 2 surgeries. Yeah. Pretty much back to back. We got that dealt with, but that underlying issue, the SVT, it's a racing heart. So if I take my heart rate to a certain point, it kind of goes up instead of going down, like instead of recovering or leveling off. And so now I've elected to be off drugs entirely. I'm not interested. The drugs put on, basically when I started taking drugs when I was diagnosed, I reacted so badly to the drugs. I put on basically 50 pounds in 2 months. It was just like, just turned into a balloon of water and sloth, and my cardio just went to nothing. And they gave me those beta blockers, which they switched later to calcium channel blockers, which basically limited my heart rate to about 130 max. And if I hit that, I would basically suffocate. Like I was just kind of like, that's what it felt like. Like you just,
passing out.
you just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And the drugs were so bad that coming off, now that I'm off the drugs, I feel great, but my heart still feels like, and maybe it's mental entirely, but my heart's been beating kind of wacky for so long, decades, that now I'm like so uber sensitive to it. So anytime my heart rate does something weird, I'm like, oh, better wind back, better sit down. And having to shift gears and become this new chapter in my life, I'm trying to look at it like that and transition, kind of like what Steve Nash said. You know, I finished basketball and now I've got into training. You know, he was personal training guys, and went on to win his first ring with Golden State Warriors. Yeah. And then now he's coaching with Brooklyn, which is so deadly. Yeah. And I just admire that type of person so much, because he's got it all. He can do anything. And yet here he's really taken the time to kind of transition himself. Yeah. I don't know him personally. Yeah. But his story is quite inspiring.
I think mostly it sounds like I think the biggest trap that we have as people is defining us by an activity that we do instead of who we are as a person, right? What we do is fine and great. The activities that we do are fine and great, but that doesn't necessarily define you. Like, to know that, you know, I played volleyball and basketball and all that stuff, and I was a CrossFit coach, and I run a gym, and I did powerlifting, and, you know, I do all this other stuff, doesn't define me as a person. That's not the only thing. So, I mean, that's another thing that we talk about, because I get lots of young athletes in here too, and it's like, be a well-rounded person. Don't let the fact that you have, you know, muscles or athletic ability or anything define who you are as a person. There's more to you than that. I remember having a discussion with a friend of mine who's a Division I strength and conditioning coach at a university in the States, and getting into a conversation with him. I'm like, man, all these strength and conditioning coaches that I meet and I talk to, it's the only thing they talk about is what happens in the weight room and strength and conditioning, and that's it. I go, what's up with that? And he laughs and goes, yeah, when I was doing my master's degree, I had this professor, and he was great, and he got sick and tired of us doing that too. And he said, you know, you can be normal people too. You don't have to just talk about that, you know, that one aspect. That you should have more dimensions to yourself. Don't be a two-dimensional person where you have that one thing that you do and that's it. That defines you as a person, because what happens if that's taken away? You know, you're no longer that person. Well, have more interests outside of that. Don't just be that one-dimensional person. Still have those blinders on for those goals, but develop character as well along the way. I had this kid that came in, and his mom basically brought him in and said, I just want his posture to improve. He was homeschooled, and they were looking for kind of like a PE outlet. He was too lazy to walk to the rec center, and we're just like 2 or 3 houses down from, or the gym's just a couple of houses down from him. So the kid showed up, and really nice kid, incredibly intelligent. That we talked about the meathead and the egghead, right? The difference between those two, and he was the classic egghead. Incredibly intelligent, zero physical ability whatsoever. Like, I mean, I literally took an empty bar, put him on him, and he folded like Gumby on a hot day, like just melted under the bar. Really nice kid, but like zero athletic talent. I've met his family. They're kind of the same, where they're highly intelligent people, just like zero athletic ability for whatever reason. Talking to his mom, there were issues throughout her life about non-inclusivity and things like PE and being mistreated or bullied and stuff like that. So I always feel like that sort of relationship with things like fitness gets passed on to your kids. And so none of their kids are like that either. So he came in and started working with them, and he was interesting to me, and I couldn't believe it because he didn't know how to run or jump, and the kid was like 14. I'm like, how, you know, I'm like, why are you running like that? He was running with this weird sort of like, almost like he had clown shoes on. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, you know, that's why your heels and your knees and your back hurt when you run. You're not supposed to run like that. You know, it's kind of like you're skipping. He's like, I don't know how to do that either. So I sell skipping ropes here. I couldn't handle it anymore. I ripped open one of the packages. I said, here's a skipping rope. This is how you skip. Go home and practice every day. Within 3 months, he was doing double unders like nobody's business. And then I said, okay, now let's work on running. That's how you run. And so he's been running like that since. And we taught him how to jump, and he stuck with it. And he eventually became quite strong and started to build confidence in himself. He came to me and said, I noticed a bunch of the ladies at the gym do dragon boating. So we've got some, for lack of a better word, older women here that do dragon boat racing. And they came here to get stronger and fitter to do dragon boating.
You can always say just wiser.
Wiser, yeah.
Wiser women.
What, young people aren't wise? Anyways, so he went and tried it. And how he tried it was he decided to get on his bike and ride his bike all the way to Comox from here, which is like 7 kilometers or something. And this is for a kid that tried his best not to go and exercise. In fact, he didn't want to walk 6 blocks to the gym when he could walk, 2 houses because he was too lazy. So he started doing that, joined the mountain bike club, started doing all of this stuff, and was just going through the roof with his strength in the gym, going from not being able to support an empty bar to doing reps with 275 pounds of back squats, deadlifts in the mid 300s. And it took him a little bit longer than it takes a lot of other kids, but he also didn't have that foundation of being able to run and jump and play physically and whatnot, because he just shirked that because it was something that was challenging to him. He ended up doing all kinds of stuff. He came in to me one day because he decided he wanted to go to public school. And he came in one day and said, I joined the wrestling team. And I'm thinking, what? That's like the complete opposite of what the image of him I had, because he's gentle and calm and very quiet and whatnot. And I said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, your first wrestling meet you come to, let me know, I'm going to show up. So I showed up to his first wrestling meet. It was the greatest thing ever. The kid had no skill, but he was insanely strong and was picking kids up and ragdolling them just because he was so much stronger. And the amount of confidence that built for him was insane. And we had an interesting conversation one day. He came to me and he said, I thought that I was genetically predisposed to just suck at everything active. He goes, I don't know if you noticed, but my family's not very athletic. And I kind of chuckled and said, yeah, I kind of noticed. And he said, so I thought I was predisposed to not be good at that. What I didn't realize is I just didn't spend enough time working on it. And I said, you're supposed to suck at stuff. You're not supposed to be really good at something right away. If you are, you're a prodigy. It's just the people who are really good at it worked at it longer than you did. And sure, they may have some genetic advantages or some environmental advantages, but you can always be a better version of yourself, always. And you just work to improve yourself a little bit each time, and then everything else will kind of look after itself. Strength and fitness, if you want to do these activities, should never be a limiting factor. It doesn't take any talent to get strong or fit. It just takes determination and hard work, and that's it. The thing that should limit your ability with something, or to start off with, is the skill of that activity, because you haven't done it before, so you shouldn't be good at it right from the start, or you're not going to be an expert. But you take your time to build that skill up. But again, the strength and the fitness level, it should never be an option in that. It should never be a question. You should be able to physically, strength-wise and conditioning-wise do that activity. It'll be the skill that limits you. And it was great, because now he's trying all kinds of stuff. He's just out there and doing everything, where he was kind of like the classic in his mom's basement on a computer working on stuff like that all day. But he's a prime example of you can be both, where he's a very, very intelligent young man, and he's worked really, really hard. The fitness stuff didn't come naturally to him. He had a very steep learning curve, but he stuck with it long enough to improve on it. And is he the strongest kid his age? No. Is he the fittest kid his age? No. But it doesn't matter, because he's stronger and fitter than he was before, and he's working to be the best version of himself. And that's kind of what it boils down to. He had defined himself as, I'm this and not that, when I'm like, why can't you be both? So that, defining yourself by an activity that you do as who you are as a person is kind of a dangerous thing, because it's limiting. And then what happens if that activity is taken away? Who are you then?
You're hearing more and more definitions of people like, I'm a gamer.
Yeah.
It's like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Right? They're never going to leave their chair.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying people should do what you want, but it's
well, but that's not who they are. That's just an activity that they do.
That's right.
Right? Yeah.
That's right. And it's more and more especially with COVID.
Yeah.
Now people coming, we've all been locked in our houses for a year.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really hard. And I think there's this real opportunity for people to begin that journey again with themselves.
No, well, you need to do stuff that also challenge yourself. Like I said, you
Yeah.
need to be challenged physically and mentally, and just kind of figure out, what am I made of? Who am I? Like, and that comes with challenges and working against adversity. You really find out who you are. If you're not faced with adversity ever and you're not challenged ever, you don't really know who you are. You don't know how you're going to respond to certain things because you haven't had to face that struggle. To struggle is okay. That's kind of what builds your character. And I think everybody should have to struggle at some point for something, because at least then you know what it takes to get there.
Do you find that there's a maturity that kind of builds through the cycle? Like, so people come in, they go all hardcore for a long time.
Yeah.
They improve, they get to a certain point, and then they're like filling their life with other things. Or is it more like this is always the supplement to not suck at life?
Yeah. I see people, it opens doors to them that they thought were closed before. There are, again, like I said, there's certain personalities where all of a sudden it becomes all consuming, and then they, again, define themselves by, well, I do fitness or I do whatever, right? A lot of people, all of a sudden, I get interesting things like a wiser woman was saying that, I know this is working. I'm like, oh, how do you know it's working? He says, well, I was helping my husband get the boat out of the water and put it on the trailer, and he was backing it up, and I was able to do it myself. Whereas before he was blown away. He's like, I can't believe you're able to do that. Where she said before she wasn't able to help at all. She was just kind of in the way. I had another lady tell me that she was her and her husband were going out for a dinner party, and she had this long dress on, and she was carrying, I guess it was a potluck or something, because she was carrying a tray of something. She was going down the stairs, and her heel got caught on the back of her dress, and she started to fall down the stairs, and she reached up and grabbed the banister and was able to hold herself up. She's like, there's no way I would have been able to do that before. I'd have been going to the bottom of the stairs and gotten really hurt. So it's kind of cool when you see those real world applications. I mean, a faster, whatever time and a heavier deadlift is fine and dandy, but if that doesn't transfer to the real world, does it really matter that much?
I don't know. A double Tabata row is pretty dope.
It's only because you can beat me at that.
Totally. The injury prevention thing is really fascinating because that is so practical. And I've heard statistics like a big factor of living longer is your squat strength.
Yeah.
Something strange like that. It's like getting off a toilet has a factor in how long you're going to live and your quality of life, I should say.
Yeah. Well, that there's a bunch of studies that kind of say and go in the same direction, that the more functional muscle mass that you carry into your senior years, the longer generally you're going to live, and also the more independent you're going to be into old age, as opposed to just VO2 max testing. VO2 max will test, your ability to process oxygen, but definitely doesn't tell you basically longevity of life or functionality of that longevity. I mean, you could live a long time, but if you're like wheelchair bound and you have to be in a nursing home, is that like the greatest life? Not the greatest life you can live. I mean, you want to be on your own and independent, be able to do stuff and play with your grandkids and hopefully your great grandkids, right? That's where that sort of idea of your squat comes into play. I mean, squat is an enormous test of almost full body strength in order to do it. It's not just your leg, because your whole body's involved in that.
What are you doing now for training personally?
For myself?
Yeah.
I'm like you. I kind of go down the rabbit hole on stuff a lot. I'll get obsessed about something and get into it. When I first started with CrossFit, the main thing was just something new and exciting. I still really like doing strength work. It's kind of my first love. I love lifting heavy things. It's kind of fun. It's a way of, maybe it's just like the little boy in me wants to see if I can pick up that rock, right? And then I got into it. Originally I got into it because I like to go surfing, and I never had a lot of money, so I didn't know anybody out in Tofino, and it's a good 3-hour drive from here. So I would get up first thing in the morning, drive out there, surf as long as I could stay in the water, and then hop back in my car and drive home at the end of the day. I got frustrated because I wanted to stay in the water longer because it's 6 hours of driving, so I figured I should at least spend at least 3 hours in the water. you get pretty tired. If you never surfed before, it's exhausting, especially if it's a decent day or even a shitty day where it's blown out and it's windy. You're fighting currents and fighting waves and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's like the hardest place in the world to surf, actually.
Yeah. Anyways, I got pissed off that I was getting tired out there. And so I thought, well, I hated doing traditional cardio. I hated back in the day, traditional cardio was like a treadmill, an elliptical, or sit on a recumbent bike. I'm like, that is boring. That seems like death to me, almost like a hamster running on a wheel, and that wasn't for me. What I really liked about, CrossFit's methodology was you could mix all those things together, weights, gymnastics, traditional cardio stuff, and mishmash them together and still get a really great cardio effect out of it. So I started originally doing it to build up my endurance for things like surfing. So I wanted to be able to surf all day and not get tired or fall asleep on the drive home. But then what happened was, like, the classic thing is you start to pick up the skills, you get pretty good at it, and then it becomes all consuming. You focus only on that. I did that for a couple of years and I got depressed. I'm like, I want to do other stuff. I don't want this to be everything that I do. And so I got back, I wanted to learn about, like I said, the gateway drug. I wanted to learn about Olympic weightlifting. And so I found Ed LaFleur, a great weightlifting coach in town, to come in and kind of show me how to weightlift and kind of mentor me on how to coach the Olympic lifts. We did that for about 6 months to a year. You'll always kind of get off. I was always kind of getting a little bit off course, then recentering and figuring out what I want to do. So I'd be like, oh, this path looks neat, and then go off that, and then come back to the main line, and then, oh, this one looks neat, and come back to the main line. So it was, CrossFit was the main thing, and then Olympic weightlifting was interesting to me, and then I wanted to get into calisthenics and kettlebell stuff, and then I got into powerlifting. And what I found was, and strongman for a time, but what I found was, I didn't want to do any one thing for a really long period of time. I wanted to mix and match and be able to do kind of a little bit of everything all of the time. So right now, I still compete in powerlifting. I would love to do another strongman competition. They were really fun. But with COVID, nothing's really been happening per se. And so I've kind of just been doing a little bit of everything and just having fun with it and keeping a base with everything personally.
Let's talk about age for a sec.
Sure.
So as guys, I really noticed a change at I think I was about 37 when I started. It wasn't that I had peaked, it was just I felt things were harder.
Yeah.
For you, what was that experience like going through? Because I remember the time, because you're a year younger. Yeah. And you were just like, dang, I'm just going to hang on as long as I can. Yeah. So what is the specific, like, how does that work generally middle age for dudes?
Well, testosterone levels start to drop off. So your ability to put on muscle mass, and as a result, your ability to recover from hard training becomes harder. Your body kind of starts to break down a little bit. So injuries become more of a serious reality. And then your ability to recover from them becomes impeded a little bit because of the age.
And that's all testosterone, or is just all the hormones that
it's a little bit of everything. So a testosterone drop is the muscle mass and your ability to recover. That's why people take steroids. It's synthetic testosterone that helps them either build muscle mass or helps them recover from.
How do I get those? No, I'm kidding.
Well, you see, there's a mail order from Mexico. I was in denial for a little bit. I think it was my late 30s, but I just ignored it and kind of kept pushing through. And I was really lucky and managed to kind of make it through that okay. I didn't start competing in something like in powerlifting until I was like in my late 30s. And so you're competing against guys that are in their mid 20s and stuff. And you're comparing yourself to them because you're trying to see what numbers you can make versus what they make to be competitive.
It was so great, man, when you were training hard for that. Yeah, I loved it.
And I was competing with them at a decent level. I mean, granted, it wasn't as popular when I started. For whatever reason, I tend to get into things before they get like super popular, and then I kind of lose interest as they get popular. So I got into powerlifting in my late 30s, and I was like, wow, I can actually kind of hang with the young bucks. This is cool. And so I started pushing real hard for that. And then it was around when I was 40. I was really excited to hit 40 for whatever reason. I know people dread it, but I was like, yeah, 40. I'm a masters athlete. I can compete with the old guys.
Yeah, now. It's like get a leg up on.
Yeah, and it was good. And I didn't mind being 40. But what I did notice is that I was like, I'm going to have to slow down. I can't keep the pedal to the floor in the fast lane the whole time because things were starting to happen. I noticed that when I'd get up, I'd be stiff and sore, and you go into the bathroom and you get up and you're shuffling to the bathroom like crackhead Ozzy Osbourne back in the day. And
Yeah, totally.
and you start to realize, like, why is this happening? And, you know, with age, you're supposed to gain wisdom as well. Some of us, it takes us a little longer, but I realized I need to rethink what I'm doing, because I'm just going to grind myself into the ground, and I'm starting to hurt more often and ache throughout the day. And
Injuries.
yeah, I ended up getting some injuries, a tore pec, blew out an adductor, that kind of stuff. And it was because I was being stupid more than anything. I wasn't listening to my body. I wasn't giving it a rest when it needed to. I was trying to do way too much all at once. I mean, at one point I was probably training hard, like 3.5, 4 hours, 5 days a week, which is way too much at that age. It's way too much at most ages.
It was pretty cool though.
Yeah. There's a fine line between cool and dumb. And I would often straddle that line. But yeah, so I mean, I backed off a bit. I take it easy. It took a reassessment, because I found that I was falling to that trap of, I was defining myself by the activities that I was doing instead of the person who I am trying to be. It was hard, because I was like, well, if I'm not this, then what am I? And I was like, you know what?
It's interesting though. I'll just cut in here for a sec, because I remember that time really well.
Yeah.
And you railed against that.
Yeah.
Identifying yourself as that.
Yeah.
And so but there's still that subconscious thing.
Yeah.
Identifying you as that.
Well, especially if you're successful, right? I mean, if you're successful at it, then you're like, this is awesome. I want more of it. You get a dopamine dump. You're high on life, man. That's what it is. If you're successful at stuff, you get high off of it. And so you want more of that. We're human. That's what we do. But I was like, I'm not just this, because I would do like 2 or 3 other things. So I would still do like 4 CrossFit WODs a week, and I would Olympic lift like 4 days a week, as well as doing the powerlifting stuff, so that I wasn't just that. But in my head, it was like, well, I don't really care about that other stuff. I just want a higher total in my powerlifting. And it's like, well, that's stupid. Then you should cut out the other stuff and just do that. But every time I did, I'd get super depressed about it. I'm like, oh, I hate this. And that's when gains stop happening. You have to like what you're doing. If you're not, if you dread it and you're like, oh my God, I drag my ass in there and do X, Y, and Z and, you know, push myself hard. It's really hard to push yourself hard if you hate doing what you're doing. If you're like super stoked, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going for it. It's really easy to succeed at that.
So easy.
Yeah. I was 40. I had a great experience. I went to BC Provincials for powerlifting, and my wife got to come and coach me. It was only the second powerlifting meet she came to, and it was funny because she was really nervous, and because I was supposed to do really well, and she didn't want to screw it up. So I'd made this whole notebook full of everything that she had to follow and do, so that she would have some guidelines, because she had only even just watched one powerlifting meet, and she'd never really been behind the scenes to see what goes on, and she was really nervous. So I put up this little cheat book for her to do, and I just thought it was really cool to have her back there with me, because it's not often that, you know, the guy usually has his gym buddies in there helping him at the meet, and I had my wife, which was pretty cool, because I mean, again, we're all little boys and we kind of want to show off for our wives a little bit. Hey, look at this, watch what I can do. So there's a little bit of that motivation. It was really cool to have her there, and I ended up winning my weight class and just missing best overall lifter by about 2 Wilks points, which is there's a pound for pound formula that they do. And I just missed out on winning a best overall, but it was such a great experience. There's some really cool people there. The other guys in my weight class were awesome. One of the guys has gone on to get, I think he got a silver at Nationals, this last Nationals. Really great guy, really passionate about it. Actually came up to me and said I was his inspiration for actually going out for a powerlifting meet, which blew my mind. I thought I was just doing this, and I was just another nameless guy on the charts with numbers next to his name. But
wow, that's so neat. How did that come together?
I have no idea. He just kind of came up to me at a meet. His name's Cosmin Olteanu. So if you ever get to watch any type of nationals or provincial like powerlifting stuff, dude's a beast. He's just awesome. He's this crazy Romanian guy. He's like over the top friendly and just really funny, and is like really strong and really good. He's far and away surpassed me at this point. Yeah, we're sitting there and he came up to me and said, "Are you Marc Mazzocchi?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Hi, I'm Cosmin." I go, "Hi, Cosmin." He's like, I really wanted to meet you. I'm like, "Really? Why?" I'm oblivious to stuff like that. I'm like, I'm just an average Joe, like no name guy. He battles with depression and stuff. He's like, I was really depressed, and I was in the gym to try and help the depression, and I didn't know where to go. I had no direction, and I saw an article where there was a newspaper article that you basically set up when I won my first powerlifting meet for the record to come and talk to me.
Oh, hilarious.
And I guess he found
That's
that
cool.
online because it was posted online. And he's like, well, if he can do it, I can do that. And so that got him into powerlifting, according to him. And he's been killing it, man. Like, it's so cool to see.
That's neat.
And so I was shocked. I mean, I'm no idea sometimes what's going on. I feel like I'm just a nameless person wandering through life half the time, and you don't realize sometimes that some of the mundane things that you do actually have an effect on other people. It was kind of cool and shocking and slightly embarrassing, and took me back a little bit when he came up to me to tell me that. I was like, man, I didn't think anybody knew who I was. I mean, I really have no social media out there about myself. I'm not really a big fan of that. I have an Instagram account, but there's nothing on it, so it was, I guess what he was doing was going through old lists of meets and stuff and seeing my name on there and the numbers that I was hitting, and then saw that article and was like, oh, okay, this guy's interesting. So I thought that was kind of cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Where do you want to take your training now? Like, where do you want to move? And you're training in your business. I mean, this is the hardest time ever.
Yeah.
To do business.
Oh my God, it's been challenging. That's for sure. I'm not really sure. I kind of just go with the flow. As much as I think I have an effect on what people do here, they have an effect on me as well. I think it's really hard to have a relationship with somebody and it only be one way, that it's always a two-way thing. So I always look at it that way. Like, it's not with the direction in here in the gym. It's funny because I feel like we do everything that you're not supposed to do. I remember when I did my personal training certification, and it had this chapter in it about being professional. And it's like, don't talk about religion, don't talk about philosophy, don't talk about this. Keep it professional, keep it at a working relationship. And I totally don't do any of that. It's really weird. I mean, I always feel like it's almost like I'm a patriarch of this really bizarre family, as cultish as it sounds. But I actually, for better or for worse, I get almost too invested in how people are doing in here. And I know everybody in here. Like, I know who their partner is. I know whether they have kids or not. I know what their job is. I know how their job's going for them. I know
their goals.
But it's, not even just what they do in the gym, but just in life in general. And so it makes it easier, like, getting back to that, you got to be able to get into their head and understand what it's like to walk in their shoes and find their path for them. Part of it is finding out who they are as a people and that as a person. And all of that is what happens outside of here. It's easy to put on a mask when you're in a certain situation, to be that guy in that situation, but it's not when you get to know people. You get to know what's really under that mask and who they are as people. And it really helps as a trainer to guide them to their goals, because you know what it is you can empathize, or you can get inside their head and know what it is to be that person and to want that goal and how to achieve that. So where we go, I don't know. Like I said, I've learned over time. When I opened the gym, I had definite ideas of what I wanted it to be, and now I have no idea what I want it to be. It just is what it is. It changes with the people that come through the door. So the gym, more often than not, isn't the building. It's not me. It's the people that are here. That is what defines the gym. And it took me a while to realize that. I thought it was me. I needed to do this, and I needed to get them to this stage that I had set out, because that would reflect on me. And now I realize none of it really reflects on me, that it's about them 100%, that when they come through the door, those are the people that create the gym, not me. I can definitely try and set the tone for what it's supposed to feel like in here, because I definitely won't tolerate certain things in here. Again, like I said, it's the people that I've come into contact with, my experience with the people that have been through the doors over time, that has changed me, I think, a lot. And it's definitely contributed to the evolution of what we kind of do here now. And then as far as, for me, athletically or physically or what I'm going to do, I have no idea. I kind of just take it day by day now. I have some plans on what I want to do as far as from week to week, as far as what I'm going to do or what I'm going to try and accomplish in the gym. I'd like to do another powerlifting meet when they kind of start up again. I did one of those Spartan races with my wife. Those are a blast. Those are really fun. But I just want to do different things. And again, I want to keep challenging myself physically and and mentally. And that happens all over the place, not just in here, right? So again, training so that if opportunities arise outside of the gym to do something that's fun or exciting or interesting, I'm ready for that. I can do it.
CrossFit's been banned in my house since 2010. I'm not even allowed to say the word CrossFit.
Yeah. Oh, that's too bad.
I know.
You'd think that it'd be a better word that would be banned in your house than that.
I know, because it's a rabbit hole of conversation, right?
Yeah.
You can just go on and on and on about it, or
Yeah.
I can. Like, there's just so much to talk about.
I mean, I think that's why, fitness modalities like CrossFit get that cult moniker, is because of that strong bond that's built within that class, because they've suffered together on a certain level, and then multiple times because they tend to come to the same classes all the time. So they talk about it as their second family, which to people, the uninitiated, to sound more cult-like, sounds cultish as hell, right? Like, you're like, what the hell are you talking about? That's not a family. It's just some people you work out with. But what they don't understand is they haven't experienced that, group suffering that happens when you're exercising and working out. Because what you're doing is hard, makes your muscles burn. It can hurt a little bit. You're opening yourself up to that experience, and you're vulnerable. And as a result, when you're receiving that support from the people around you, it can build certain bonds for sure.
Thanks, Mark.
No worries.
Yeah, it's always good to see you.
Yeah,
and
man.
there's so much there's so much to dig into, but I hope, if anything, people take from this conversation is that it's a journey, not a destination. You can point your ship in the direction in the practice of fitness and keeping your body healthy and trying new things.
Yeah. Well, and being a well-rounded person means a little bit of everything, right? So don't just pigeonhole or define yourself by one aspect of who you are. Be a whole person, whether that's fitness or not. I mean, I've got tons of people that are fitness people that maybe neglect other parts of their life, and they should look after all of it and be a well-rounded person, Renaissance person, a little bit of everything.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. Please remember to comment at The Ranger Cabin on social media and share this episode with anyone you think might enjoy it. I really appreciate all the feedback I receive and look forward to creating interesting content for you to be well, stay well, and keep your fire hot. I'll be thinking of you. Until next time, I'm Zach Whyte, and this is The Ranger Cabin.